The other one that I have explored and continue to explore and use is something called paper lithography.
Yeah.
What's that?
So that is, it's either a photographic or a hand-drawn image that you then scan, print from a laser printer. So
It has to be laser, doesn't it?
it has to be laser.
Yeah.
Laser toner has that same property that it will attract ink, but it's not so keen on water. But being paper, obviously, if you make cheap printed paper wet, it tends to fall apart. So I've managed to perfect it, so that doesn't happen anymore.
Are you running a course on that?
I will be running a course on that at some point. But that, I mean, you get a similar result. It's never going to compare to a stone litho, but it's way more accessible, obviously.
Is it a one print process?
Yeah. Because your paper just disintegrates effectively. And I tend to print those on super thin paper like this, and use them as collage elements essentially, which can be really effective. Any further questions, Jan?
I'd like to ask about ideas and inspiration. You were talking about how you got the idea for your print and had to stop suddenly when you saw that building. That was obviously a really important moment that triggered something in you, and I'd be just interested to hear from the other printers where you all get your ideas and inspiration. What triggers you to make a print?
My work's always been, I was brought up in South London, and it's always been urban inspired. So architecture, and as Craig does, architecture, the patina of walls, crumbling walls, rusty buildings, Cromer Pier. I did Cromer Pier a few years ago. Now predominantly abstract, but it still is. I don't think of these as abstract because, or even my paintings as abstract or collages, because it's all from the same wellspring. I did flirt with landscape for economic reasons once, and it paid, but I didn't like it. Right? So, but they sell. People love landscape. But I pulled away from that as soon as I realised that it was eating my soul. So I don't do that anymore. I have done a lot of figure stuff. I used to, when I was living in Cambridgeshire, do a lot of life drawing. There's something fabulous about doing figure. It's such a difficult thing to do in the media. So I had quite a few screen prints using figures, but no, my heart is in the urban environment. I've always had it. It just takes on different vibes depending on where I'm living.
Me?
Yeah, anyone else?
That's not why you're looking at me.
Yes. Oh well. I suppose I make a conscious effort to go around what I call my artising, because if I have them in all the time, I never get anywhere. I'd be stopping and admiring every single crack in the pavement or every crack in the wall. So yes, cracks, fissures, those textures, old church floors. If I go to an old church, I'm always dismayed when they've put a new floor in. They've been the starting point of a lot of prints in the past, and still are, and still there. So I suppose it's honing in, often almost on a microscopic level sometimes, really focusing in. Just something will catch my eye and then I'll go and look in a bit more detail. Peeling paint, discovered, was in Berlin recently, and I've got a friend who grew up in old East Berlin and lived on the sort of largest Soviet military base outside of Russia itself. And of course, when the war came down, they all moved out and they've left all the buildings. Not all of them, the barracks, all of the barracks are converted to accommodation. But curiously, the grand buildings, the administration buildings are all left there for you to find a gap in the fence. Okay.
Amazing.
And the decay, yes,
Yeah.
it's that whole wet and snappy thing, isn't it? That the decay of these structures just falling down, water coming in, the patterns it makes on the wall. What wallpaper does when it's almost but not quite fallen off the wall.
Yeah.
It sort of drapes, it looks almost like a delicate fabric tissue hanging there, but it's just wallpaper. And you think, how's it still hanging there? All those sort of things go in and they don't always get used, but they're all stored away. One day they'll probably be used.
Nice.
I think I would say that my inspiration comes from quite a traditional source, the idea of kind of resonating with nature. In other words, sort of acting, making a mark that kind of somehow resonates with what you're experiencing. And that's what inspires me. So living in rural Norfolk, I see a lot of trees, they're moving, they're resonating. So I find that they kind of dance. The picture at the top end is called a dancing oak. And then actually I really, quite straightforwardly, quite like the idea of making images of dance itself. Very calligraphic, kind of idea of movement and being taken out of yourself, because you talked about that. You're not, when you're moving, you're not conscious. I like that. So not conscious in the same way.
No.
So that's the sort of calligraphic dance, nature, movement. Inspiration.
I think this is quite a difficult one, quite a tricky one for me.
Don't blame me, it's Jen.
But if you experience somewhere, you're walking through somewhere, or it's a new landscape, or it's a new place, and like when you go on holiday, for the first 2 days you see everything really freshly, don't you, until you get used to it again. And it's wanting to somehow make sense of that time, and so working from memory, working from the smells, the sounds, the feel of air, all those sort of vague amorphous things that give you, I don't know, like you said earlier, when you're doing your drawing, you go right back into that particular point in time, don't you? It's the same for me with a colour. It's trying to pinpoint what it was that made that particular thing unique. And I suppose I tend to work with landscape rather than urban landscape, because I didn't grow up in an urban landscape particularly. So I have other reference points, or gardens. I'm fascinated by gardens, fascinated by layers of colour, pinpricks of colour, rogue colours, wild cards, all those sorts of things might be feeding in a vague sort of way to what I'm interested in. And I can't really specify it anymore. If I could, I wouldn't bother painting it.
Any other questions at all? No? Well done. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, great.
It's really